I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Professor Keating, I have a letter here from the president of the University of California system, Michael Drake. I had written him about my concerns about some of the things going on in campuses within the system, and he wrote me a letter back, which I appreciate. But this is the chief executive of the entire UC system, which includes your campus and 10 others. It's an organization that includes 200,000 some employees as well as all the students. And one of the things he says in the letter is that the University of California has consistently opposed calls for boycott against and divestment from Israel. While the university affirms the right of our community members to express diverse viewpoints, a boycott of this sort impinges on the academic freedom of our students and faculty and the unfettered exchange of ideas on our campuses, which is good. I'm glad he said that. It's the right policy, of course. It's actually, the law in California. But how has the BDS movement, how active has it been on your campus, and what role have has the faculty played, or some faculty members, in supporting it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been incredibly active, and they do tend to exercise, as I said, every year at the coincident with Israel's Independence Day and with Holocaust Remembrance Day, this Justice in Palestine Week, which many students have told me they call Israel Apartheid Week or Hate Israel Week. It's an event that just last year, May 2023, 7 months before the October 7th terrorist attacks, found on a campus dorm a swastika made of human feces, where Jews live and work. It's a combined use facility. At that time, there were also events at our sister campus, University of California, Santa Cruz, which were both anti-Semitic and homophobic. Again, we hear words from Dr. Drake about how we take this seriously, and there'll be panels. This is over a year. To my knowledge, no substantive changes have taken place. Is it a coincidence that it takes place, coincident with this event that's held annually? I can't say for sure, but it certainly predates October 7th. And so after October 7th, he did commission a panel, which apparently has a budget of over $7 million, which had a combined mission to combat anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. So we haven't seen, at least at my campus, my personal eyewitness, I have not seen any repercussions from it. And in fact, as I mentioned, dialogue is often discouraged by people that support the academic and cultural boycott of the one single Jewish state.
Extremely troubling. You also mentioned earlier that the dean of the faculty refused to meet with Jewish students, even as he readily met with representatives of other groups. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, sir. That was the chair of the academic senate, John Hildebrand, who is the responsibility for effectively running meetings and having panels brought in, but not to advocate political causes or things of that nature. He did knowingly meet with Students for Justice in Palestine before they were issued a cease and desist order for violation of campus policies. And he refused on 5 separate occasions that I've documented in my written testimony to meet with any Jewish students, citing lack of time, and he blew them off, in my opinion, referring them to lesser campus procedural violations, even though they're expressing their heartfelt pain and suffering emotionally, sometimes feeling physically threatened. And he is responsible, for faculty governance. We have a shared governance model in our campus, and he did refuse to meet with very many stakeholders, including Jewish professors such as myself and others, outside of very limited circumstances.
And this gentleman is still the chair of the academic senate? He
will be replaced in the upcoming academic year.
Okay. I want to ask a final question, and anyone on one of the witnesses can weigh in on this if you'd like, which is that let's imagine that, when school resumes in most places in the fall, you see these unlawful encampments, which are still actually operating in some places, but on your campuses or in any particular campus, they come back in full force along the lines of what we saw at UCLA, we saw at UC San Diego, or at least they start to form. What action would you recommend that the leaders of those universities takes? We've seen a menu of options for how these things have been handled. Some have allowed them to grow and grow and grow until they become unmanageable. Some have given in to the demands of those leading the encampments. Others have simply enforced the law and campus policies in an even-handed manner and dealt with the issue in short order. So which of these options might you recommend to a university leader? And maybe we can start with you, Mr. Rienzi, and go down the panel for whoever would like to answer.
Yeah, happy to address it, and it's the right question because fall is coming soon and students need to be able to safely return to campus. I think what the universities really need to do is aggressively stop the encampments from starting. So somebody comes and sets up tents. The first move is you just remove the tents. You do not allow a group to take over a section of campus. You do not allow them to stay there and stop others from entering. I think the key aspect of the mistake at a lot of these schools has been to allow the problem to fester, allow it to grow, allow it to get reinforced. And when you do that to a group of people chanting death to Jews or beat that effing Jew, what inevitably happens is that the Jews get excluded from parts of campus, and the universities have an obligation to make sure that doesn't happen. And, I'll just speak as to our lawsuit. Our clients are very concerned. They have to return to campus in, just under 2 months from now, and UCLA still does not seem to be able to stop the encampment, or really to muster the will to do it, and they need to be told by a federal court or otherwise to do that.
Yeah, I asked the committee to consider, the following thought experiment, as we physicists are likely to do, which is, to imagine that on our campus we have access to reproductive rights for young women on campus. Imagine if there was an organization diametrically opposed to that, believe in strict right to life, and they set up an encampment, a no-go zone, where young women felt intimidated to exercise their privileges and rights on this campus. I think their ID cards would be taken away and shut down later that afternoon. I don't think there's ever, kind of the tolerance of these things. They allow themselves to fester, as Mr. Enzi said. And I think enforcing existing laws, we were asked about, do we need more funding for committees, and do you guys need to do, you men and women need to do more funding-wise? That may be true, but every university has principles of community. They are entitled to enforce those principles of community, and they have an obligation to do so equally, liberally, and equitably for their students to feel safe and their employees to operate effectively in the workforce.
Would you like to add to that? We're a little over time, but if you could briefly.
The administration should acknowledge and apply the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and disseminating this definition would enhance awareness and understanding of what constitutes anti-Semitism, because I think a lot of students don't even recognize it when they see it. Additionally, the Human Resources Office should increase its efforts to advertise the reporting mechanisms for Title VI violations across campus, because again, I think a lot of students aren't even aware of when these violations are taking place. The DEI programming and initiatives should have orienting materials and written guidelines that explicitly include anti-Semitism based on the IRA definition. And finally, the administration must take a firm stance against the display of symbols of hate, such as swastikas and Hamas flags.
Thank you very much. I'll now recognize the ranking member for a closing statement.